Week 13 of the NFL season is officially over with, and in today's video I want to talk about my 5 biggest winners and losers of Week 13. Now, in a week full of very entertaining and interesting matchups, one of the more interesting matchups we did have this week was Atlanta versus New York. Now, coming into this week, we did get some reports that Aaron Rodgers was clear for more physical activity, which is shocking in and out of itself. But ultimately this week, Tim Boyle did get the start, and then eventually Trevor Siemian did come in for a little bit of relief time, and let's just put it very bluntly, both those quarterbacks were horrible. And despite the fact that their defense held their opposing team to only 13 points and less than 194 total yards, they still lost. This is one of the worst offenses in NFL history. Today, they had 259 total yards and only managed to score 8 points. And 2 of those 8 points were from a safety that the defense caused. It was a punting slugfest as they combined for over 16 punts in the entire day. And at certain points in this game, the New York Jets were driving down the field and then they had 2 fumbles lost and an interception thrown. This offense is abysmal. Aaron Rodgers cannot save this team at this point. I made a full-fledged video already on them, and I do think that video still stands up to this day. Should they have prepared for a backup quarterback with Aaron Rodgers? 100%. But now you're stuck with Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, and Zach Wilson, and this team's screwed. They're done for the year. And for the sake of the future of the New York Jets, I better not see Aaron Rodgers suit up for the rest of the year. Let him heal that Achilles so that next year they can go all in. Now, on to Atlanta. Atlanta did have a very tough task ahead for them as they're going up against a very good New York Jets defense. And while I do not expect Desmond Ridder to go out there and have a great game, he played relatively good given the circumstances. He was 12 for 27 for 121 yards, 1 touchdown, and bit more importantly, not a single interception. In fact, give some credit to Atlanta here. No turnovers in the entire day. That's definitely a big W for them. But let's keep it a buck about this Atlanta Falcons team. They have playmakers all across this offense and defense, but the fact they have Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith as their head coach and quarterback combination is never going to be good enough to win them any sort of significant games. They should have lost this game. If they were going up against any other really good defense and offense, they would have got smoked in this game. But the fact that the Jets have one of the worst historical offenses in NFL history, of course you're going to win. But I will give credit where credit is due. Kyle Pitts had a pretty decent game and this defense was phenomenal the entire night. But with that being said, I'm just not that impressed with this team. I think this team is a quarterback away and honestly a head coach away from being really good. But let's go ahead and move on to a much more interesting game. This game being the Houston Texans versus the Denver Broncos. And if we had told you this probably 5 weeks ago that the Houston Texans and the Denver Broncos was going to be a very crucial matchup for the AFC playoff race, I probably would have laughed at you. But here we are today, and the Houston Texans won with a score of 22-17 and have a very, very good shot at making the playoffs. There's a lot to diagnose with this game, and I think I'll just kind of briefly cover every little bit of it. For starters, CJ Stroud had a very good game. He was 16 for 27 for 274 yards and 1 touchdown. Hopefully Tank Dell does get healthy at some point for the rest of the season because they might need him come playoff time. But in his absence, Nico Collins had an absolutely crazy day. He had 9 receptions for 191 yards and 1 touchdown. And for Houston, we already know this is one of the better offenses in the entire NFL. They're efficient, they can run the ball at times effectively, and they have some really good pass catchers. It's really just a question of can the defense do enough to win them the game. And in this week, they did that and some more. Because defensively, the Houston Texans only allowed 17 points and picked off Russell Wilson 3 different times. Now, if we move on to the Denver Broncos, this is a tough loss, obviously, but I still think that they did a couple good things that I'm still pretty impressed with. For starters, let's get this out of the way. This Broncos team is not built to come from behind. Because once they become a very pass-heavy offense, that's when Russell Wilson starts to make mistakes, that's when the offensive line doesn't hold up, that's when the pass catchers don't get open, it just kind of falls apart. This is an offense that has to stay on schedule, they have to run the ball, and they have to not turn the ball over, and in this week, all of those things did not go their way. Russell Wilson had 3 interceptions, Javonte Williams was extremely inefficient running the ball, and the offensive line was horrible. And this is nothing new for Denver Broncos fans, they all kind of knew this. They had to stay ahead of the chains, ahead of the curve, and in this week, they just weren't able to do so. And a big reason why? CJ Stroud is that dude. Fortunately though, for both these teams, their schedules are relatively easy coming forward. I know Denver has a matchup with the Lions in a couple weeks, but still, for the most part, both these teams have really easy schedules. So if they do manage to win a lot of their games, there's a very, very strong chance that both these teams can somehow make the playoffs. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that one. This was a very fun game nonetheless. But now, let's go ahead and move on to a very, very weird game. I don't really know how to describe it other than that. The Arizona Cardinals beat the Pittsburgh Steelers with a score of 24-10. And I say weird because offensively, the Cardinals did a lot of really good things, and then the same cannot be said about the Pittsburgh Steelers. For both these offenses, they were both able to get the run game going, but not the pass game going. Kenny Pickett did get hurt in this game, and I do imagine he's going to be missing some time. So Mitchell Trubisky will have to step up and be that quarterback 1 for weeks to come. And let's keep it a buck with each other. That is bad news for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially in a very tight AFC playoff race. They're not going to win the division. The Browns will probably get their act together and ultimately become second place in that division. So if you're Pittsburgh, you're fighting against Houston, Denver, and teams like that. And with no Kenny Pickett as your starting quarterback, that might be bad news for you. And in my opinion, this was a very winnable matchup that they should have won. And then they lost, and they lost kind of in embarrassing fashion. It was not a very competitive game, especially in the second half, and the team in total played really bad. The run game was probably the only really good thing that happened. For some reason, Najee Harris continues to get more carries than Jalen Warren. I think that needs to be fixed. And outside of a couple big plays from George Pickens, the passing game was just pretty anemic the entire night. As for Arizona, listen, your season's already done. You're 3-10, but this is definitely a nice win, especially for your moral feeling about your roster. James Conner is a truly good running back. He had 25 carries for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that was kind of the catalyst for them winning this game. You also have to show some love to Trey McBride, who had 8 catches for 89 yards and 1 touchdown. And despite not even throwing the ball that much to guys like Hollywood Brown and Rondale Moore, they still were able to score 24 points and have a pretty efficient offense. It was definitely ugly football, but that was kind of to be expected in a rainy condition type of game. But all of those variables that are out of the control of both the teams kind of leans in favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers want to run the ball. They want to control the time. They want to not force turnovers. They want to play good defense, and they kind of did all that. Yet they lost because the offense is totally anemic, and defensively, they couldn't hold up the entire night. This defense needed this offense to do something. They couldn't do it, therefore they lost. For Pittsburgh, I'm not saying your season's done, but you got to get things turned around pretty quickly, and they have to, and I mean have to, win these easy matchups. But now let's go ahead and move on to the NFC Playoff Conference Championship rematch, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the San Francisco 49ers. And man, damn. I knew San Francisco was good. I didn't know they were this good though. They dropped 42 points on a pretty decent Philadelphia Eagles offense, and then defensively shut out the Eagles to only 19 points in the entire day. And it wasn't really like Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith were having bad games. It was just outside of those 3 guys, nothing good happened offensively. The run game was horrendous. Their leading rusher was Jalen Hurts with 20 rushing yards. And to what seems to be a kind of common theme for this team, the play calling was very bizarre the entire night. Offensively, the inconsistencies with the run games, the inconsistency with the play calling, kind of what cost them this matchup. And for San Francisco, they took advantage of that, and defensively, they played a really sharp game. Now, the final score was 42-19, but to be honest with you, the 49ers started to stat pad a little bit towards the end. They wanted to flex their muscles and make Philadelphia look pretty bad, and I think it's really respectable. I don't disrespect it, I think it's smart. But I did feel like I had to mention that for any Philadelphia Eagles fans who think that it was a close game. It was close at times, but ultimately, they were definitely outclassed and outcoached in every manner. San Francisco is the #1 team in the entire NFL, and it is going to be extremely hard for a team like Dallas or Philadelphia or Detroit to overthrow them. I kind of feel bad because Baltimore has them in a few weeks, and I'm scared Baltimore is going to get embarrassed too. Because when you look up and down the San Francisco roster, they really don't have any big significant holes. Sure, their offensive line is not really special outside of Trent Williams, but they know how to use their offensive line effectively. You hardly ever see Brock Purdy ever get pressure because he's getting the ball out of his hands so quickly. And defensively, sure, they have some holes in the secondary, but it's masked by a really good up front 7. And for Philadelphia, the same can't be said for them. Philadelphia has some holes, especially on the defensive side of things. And I've said this before, even if Philadelphia does get a Shaq Leonard, it doesn't really help them that much. This Philadelphia Eagles offense is good. Their defense extremely overrated. And listen, Philadelphia is truly a top 3 team in the NFL. I think they're probably still the second best team in the NFL, but they are extremely outclassed by a team like San Francisco. So to summarize everything, San Francisco good, Philadelphia good, San Francisco better. But now, to go ahead and end up the video, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs in what was a matchup on Sunday Night Football. Now, I don't really know why I felt this way, but I felt like Green Bay had a very good chance coming into this week. And then they won, and I wasn't very shocked for whatever reason. I actually kind of felt like that was the more obvious outcome. I don't really know why, I just had that gut feeling. And despite Kansas City having a relatively decent game from Mahomes, a really good rushing game with Isaiah Pacheco, and Travis Kelce having 81 passing yards, they still lost by 8 points. And the big reason why? Jordan Love is legit, guys. There was a couple game stretch where Jordan Love couldn't do anything right, but now he can't do nothing wrong. On the day, he was 25 for 36 for 267 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he just kept making play after play after play, and he looked better than Patrick Mahomes this week. It also helps when AJ Dillon is having good games too. He had 18 carries for 73 yards. And it also does help when your defense is playing some really good football. Give them credit, they actually had a very good game against a very good Kansas City offense. But this Chiefs team has a glaring hole that they don't have any receivers that can get any separation. At this point in his career, Travis Kelce's not the same guy that he was maybe even last year. He's still the best tight end in the league. It's nothing crazy about that. But they don't have anyone else who can take any sort of pressure off a guy like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. They have some deep threat guys who can get vertical and create some speed and separation, but they don't catch the ball effectively. They don't have an efficient route runner who can play the underneath stuff and can do everything that you need them to do, sort of like a guy like a Julian Edelman type of player. And they've had chances to go out there and get players in free agency and in drafts and in the trade market, but they just haven't done it. I'm not saying this team needs to go out there and get a Devontae Adams or a Tyreek Hill or anything crazy, But the fact that they don't have a true number one receiver to put alongside a guy like Travis Kelce is really hurting their team. And I think, honestly, right now, they would get smoked by a team like San Francisco, Philly, or even Dallas. And truthfully, I don't think that that's much of an overreaction. They are extremely outclassed and out-talented and outperformed by a lot of these really good teams. You put a team like, let's say Dallas, because I know that's probably the most controversial team that I'm talking about here. They will get the pass rush off. They have good corners who can make plays. They're not getting burnt in the secondary. Now, defensively for the Kansas City Chiefs, they're really good, but they got exposed by Jordan Love, and that should tell you something. Going back to the Packers here before I end off this video, Jordan Love might just be that guy. He might just be the guy who is the successor of Aaron Rodgers. And I truly do think that this past 3 or 4 games that he has been really on a tear has sort of resurrected all people's opinions on him, because there was about a 5 to 6 week span where people were truly contemplating whether this guy should even be on the team next year. There were people saying that they should trade up to try to get a guy like a Drake May or Caleb Williams to replace Jordan Love. But here we are now, and this guy is playing phenomenal. He's playing loose. He's playing controlled. He knows the reads. He knows what he's doing. He's playing really good football. And don't look now, this team is 6-6, and if they keep playing at this rate, they might just make the damn playoffs. But that is all I have to say about these different games. If you guys did enjoy the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button because it would help me out a ton. As well as if you know anyone in your family or your friends who like NFL content, make sure to share this video because that would also help me out a ton. But I love you guys. Peace.